Welcome to the Freelance Thrive. Here we talk with skilled freelancers about their professional journey. Stay tuned for real-life experiences to learn and actionable steps to take to improve your freelancing career. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works, and my guest is Adrian Ashton, an untypical enterprise consultant, a published author, and a public speaker who helps people and organizations deal with uncertainty. And today we'll talk about why resilience is so important for freelancers, how to keep moving forward when everything falls apart, and how you can navigate uncertainty and adversity. So welcome, Adrian.
Thank you. Hello. It's always a little bit strange to hear yourself being introduced on a show like this, because we do so many things in our lives and we're always going to go, how am I going to be introduced today? What have they found out about me that I wanted to try and hide or make sure they heard? So thank you. That's a really nice overview. I think I'm happy with that.
Okay, let's go from there. And before we had this conversation, you shared with me that you went through multiple life-altering challenges while freelancing also. So can you please take me back to a moment when things felt at their worst and what kept you going?
Okay, sure. So just for context here, I'm British. And we British are very good about complaining and moaning and catastrophizing. So as I share my story, if you think, crikey, it couldn't have been that bad. Well, usually it wouldn't be, but I'm going to try and keep it as honest and factual as I can. And I think, Yuri, we talk about things, challenges we faced, shocks to our freelancing self, shocks to our human self. And what I've realized over the years is however bad you think a situation is, however not any worse it could become, the universe always has a way of making it worse. And just when you think you've dealt with it and you go, great, I've dealt with that issue, we've overcome that, okay, we're going to be okay now, the universe will go, right, you thought that was bad, I'm going to throw this thing at you next year. And so we go, so I guess in terms of challenges and low points, when I just thought, I physically find myself sitting in a corner of a room just with my head in my hands going, what do I do now, for a few moments? That sense of overwhelm of when you do it. There have been a few moments in my life, I think, as a freelancer that we go to, and I'm not going to list all of them. Some of them were quite sudden. So I've been made homeless, or as a family, we were made homeless by flooding. That was quite a big kind of shock to go, okay, I have small children and we no longer have a home and I work from home. What do we do now? My father was rushed into emergency surgery for advanced cancer. He lived at the other end of the country to me. So again, I have small children and I'm running a freelance business. So there is no manager or team I can say, pick up my client projects because I need to go and be with my dad. So that kind of sense of that shock of how do we do that? And then there've been the other things that kind of go on that you go, okay, they're almost harder to do with, an emergency surgery for your parent, being made homeless from a flood. Those are kind of immediate events. You have the shock all in one go, and then you start to work through it. A few years ago, I became a carer to one of my now adult children, and I'm now a carer to several other family members. Those are more of a drip thing that they start, you don't realize just how major or life altering they are when they start, because it's a gradual thing. And then suddenly you go, crikey, I'm suddenly doing this. When did I get to this point? And how have I not realized it's gotten this pressured along the way? So I think those life altering challenges come in kind of two buckets with flooding to go with. And the things that I guess and I know we're going to talk about this a bit more about how we build resilience and how we think about it, but there's two things that I've always kind of held on to in those moments as we go along. And they're both from movies. Okay? So not textbooks. And I think, we can learn a lot from places that as freelancers, but I'll read this book, Stephen Bartlett, Diary CEO, and all the rest. Actually, if we look for wisdom in unexpected places, so the two things that I've drawn from over the years within this, Yuri. One is the Disney movie Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay, now bear with me on this, folks. Now, even if you haven't watched the full franchise, most people are aware of the character of Captain Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of secretly wants to be a bit of Captain Jack. Anyway. And actually, there's a whole thing about pirates and freelancing historically as well. Maybe that's another conversation, another episode. But there is a beautiful moment in one of the movies where the ship's been lost, the crew's marooned, everything's kind of, the world's literally about to end because Davy Jones is coming, they're cracking all the rest. And they go, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? This is insurmountable. And Captain Jack turns around and says, you know what? I'm not going to do the voice just to reassure people. He says, you know what? The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude to the problem. That you're seeing it as something we have to fix now. And that got me thinking for my first idea, which was there will always be problems. There will always be challenges. And the world will somehow keep going, which means however catastrophic this is in the moment, at a future point, it will be resolved. We will have endured it, overcome it, whatever it is. The problem, therefore, is not the problem of being made homeless. It's not the problem that my father is in emergency surgery. The problem is I do not know when it will resolve. Because if I knew how long it would be before it's resolved, it would be easy. I could say, okay, it's going to be 6 months and I can plan for 6 months. I can bear that. I can cope. It's we don't know until we get there. That's the first thing that I hold to, which is I don't have to worry about all of the problem. I just have to keep myself going by knowing that one day it will resolve. The other one is a Monty Python movie, The Life of Brian. Now, again, any Catholics or fundamental Christians listening, probably close your ears because I'm talking about a movie that was declared heretical by the Christian church or branches of it. There is, at the end of Life of Brian, there's a song. Many people have seen the movie. Always look on the bright side of life. And I think it's wonderful. There's a line in it which I find wonderfully reassuring in a kind of a morbid way. And then the line goes, you've come from nothing. You're going back to nothing. So what have you lost? Nothing. So actually this idea of, as much as we find comfort and assurance in the homes we live in, the Lego sets we build, the cars we drive, ultimately they will all be gone. Sooner or later, let's enjoy them while they're here, but don't panic. So that sense of being okay to lose stuff is actually really freeing. So that thing of keeping going. So one is Captain Jack Sparrow. Don't focus on the problem, focus on the knowledge that it will resolve one day. And Monty Python, ultimately you're going to lose everything anyway. So just make some choices about how you're going to be happy with that.
But still, when you are getting something, it's good, but you are not that happy as you are sad when you are losing something, especially when you are losing a home, when you are leaving. So I'm curious, like in this situation, what were your first steps? What did you do? How do you approach this kind of situations?
Okay, so I've mentioned there about, look for wisdom and encouragement in not the business textbooks. And now I'm going to talk about going to a business textbook. So many years ago, I was introduced to the concept of something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If people haven't come across this, it's a really interesting model to look at. Like with any model and framework, it's not perfect, but it's an interesting thing. So Maslow says there's this hierarchy, like a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid is self-actualization, being the ultimate freelancer, creating your freelance course, speaking at conferences, being all that you can be. At the bottom of the pyramid is having somewhere to sleep tonight, knowing where your next meal is coming from. So Maslow kind of argued that unless you can get that first level established and secure, you can't progress up the ladder. You can't go up the pyramid to achieve the bigger things. So I think there's something there about scale and focus that I found really useful. So, being made homeless, there's the sort of, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deliver that project? How am I going to manage the relationships? Those are all at the top end of the pyramid. Yeah. I need to focus on the bottom end first. So rather than try and let my brain overwhelm itself, let me try and constrain my thinking to go, let me just think about the first step on the ladder. What can I do to try and help my family to have somewhere to sleep tonight? What can I do to try and make sure they've then got somewhere to sleep next week? And then once those things start to go, you start to feel a bit more in control, and then you start to step up again. So that's that sense of what's the most basic fundamental thing you can do, and just put all of your energy on that. And as awful as it sounds, people will understand, and maybe we'll come back to this. People will understand and be more forgiving and understanding than you think they will, especially clients. And just to give you, just to try and be gentle on yourself. You don't have to fix it all today or tomorrow or even next week. At some point it will fix. So what's the most important thing to do today to keep yourself warm and fed?
Yeah, I read this book, The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and there is afterward from the son of main characters who were going through this crazy unhuman experience, and it was a story that this person's parents who went through Auschwitz, they were starting a business, and then something went wrong with their business, and they're like packing their stuff, and they're leaving home because their home is getting out, and they're happy, they're singing songs, and this child was coming back like Mom, why are you so happy? We're losing our home. And she was like, no, as long as we are alive and healthy, we'll solve everything. And it struck me so much because when the war in Ukraine started, it also shifted my perspective, and I was there for a really long time, and it shifted my perspective overnight. And that's exactly it. As long as you are healthy and your family healthy and alive, you can deal with everything. And I feel like it's very similar to what you are saying, that as long as everything is okay with you, as long as you can take actions, just focus on the first step and just figure out as you go.
And I think we can always take it. However much we may feel powerless, there are always actions we can take. They may not feel like big actions, but they are our choices, our control, our power that we still have to have influence.
How would you define resilience?
This is interesting. So I'm going to go back to the movies again for this one, just to warn you. So I know there are lots of people and books and authors and speakers who talk about resilience as coming back stronger. What doesn't kill you will make you stronger. As building it's a way that you can create new skills and new opportunities. You invest. I want to go back to the Marvel Avengers movies. Okay, so the first Marvel Avengers movie, the first Captain America movie. So before Steve Rogers gets the special sauce in the syringe and becomes the hero, all the rest, he is a very small kid. He is always picked on. He is always bullied. Other kids are always beating him up. And what his friend says to him one time, why don't you just stay down? Just stay down. Because every time you go back, they're going to beat you up again. And his answer's always struck with me. And he says, as long as I can get back up, they haven't won. It doesn't matter how long it takes me to get back up. It doesn't matter what I have to do to get back up. It doesn't matter what they do to me after I've got back up. I have gotten back up. That for me is the kind of the kernel, the nub of resilience. You can get back up. You don't have to come back perfectly. You don't have to come back stronger. You just have to come back in some way. That's for me, that definition of resilience.
What helps you to maintain resilience?
I think there's probably three things I'd kind of put on my checklist for that. One is the traditional generic advice that everyone says, which is perspective. Look back over your life and remember all of those awful, dark days that you went through, and somehow you got through them. If you're listening to this podcast, I want to congratulate you as a listener, because you have survived 100% of all the worst days of your life so far. Okay? And you've done that. You've achieved it. Congratulate yourself. And we forget that. We forget how incredible we are, how resilient we have been in the past. So sometimes it's important to kind of look back on our the things that we're maybe embarrassed by or don't want to look at because they were painful. But we can draw strength from that. So that's one number perspective. I think the other thing as well, one of the worst things I hear people say, and again, listeners, if anyone says this to you, give them a slap in the face. And if they get upset, tell them I told you to do this. Adrian Ashton said, I have to slap you in the face. If anyone says to you, just take it one day at a time. That's so awful. And no one who is living through what you are living through knows how awful it feels. Okay, the fears you have, the anxieties, all the rest. The best you can do, the most I would dare to offer you is to say, what can you do in the next hour? Just get through the next 60 minutes. Okay, there'll be another hour waiting for you at the end after that. What can you do in the next 60 minutes? If that's have a nap, have a nap. Go for a walk, go for a walk. Try and make some phone calls. 60 minutes, just have that. Okay, that's a big resilience piece. Just really narrow down that focus. And the third thing that I found really useful, so again, having been made homeless through flooding, along with lots of other freelancers and small businesses in my town at the time, having become an unpaid carer, for whom there is no support as a carer or as a freelancer. That doesn't work that way in the UK. I've actually taken those kind of challenges and shocks and said, well, I can't be the only one. There are enough people in the world that I'm not that special. Okay, the universe is not singling me out just for this. More people are struggling with it. And so what I've tried to do is take those experiences and say, rather than find a community, build a community, reach out, stand up, wave a hand and go, listen, I'm really struggling with this over here. Anyone else find themselves in this big pile of doo-doo that's a bit smelly and we don't know what to do next? Let's all kind of gather around this bus stop or go to this pub or whatever it is. And we'll just start talking about this thing that we are all struggling with that no one else seems to want to talk about. And that, again, is a hugely encouraging piece, that solidarity that says, if we realize we are not the only one going through it, and I think you were talking separately, you mentioned this earlier, the knowledge that other people are going through it and have gone through it means there are ways we can overcome it. There are ideas, tricks, hacks, solutions to implement. We just have to find ways to share them more easily with each other.
Coming back to this, take it just one day in a time.
No, slap on the face, not one day at a time.
It reminds me the thing when people don't know how to stand out, how to meet others, and someone tell, just be yourself. Just be yourself. It's like pretty similar thing. Like I don't know how to be myself. Like I'm in a new environment. I'm at the conference. I'm like in a new community. I don't know. Like what the hell does it mean to be yourself? I can't be myself. Like just be yourself. There are no like nothing.
It's terrible. There is one of the ways that I found the courage and the confidence to quote unquote be myself was about being honest. So actually, rather than thinking, how do I present this image as a freelancer, which is polished and slick and confident, or, at a conference or in a new community, just to kind of say what I'm thinking and feeling in my head out loud is okay. And what gave me the encouragement to do that, again, TV shows, movies. There's a TV show a few years ago called Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And if you watch some of the early seasons of it, they called themselves the Scooby Gang. But one of the things that was brilliant about them and that I always took great encouragement was they were painfully honest with each other. Yeah, they would say, I'm really not sure how to beat this demon this week. I've just come back from the dead. How am I supposed to feel about this? And they would have this as open conversations with each other. And then somehow, despite being so confused and vulnerable with each other, they would still keep living. People would still serve them in the shops. People would still hang out with them in the cafeteria. They'd still find a way to save the world at the end of the season. So that gave me the confidence, says it's okay to say to people, I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to do next. Can you give me some direction? As freelancers, again, this is so sorry, listeners. It feels like we've cut you out of a secret conversation that Yuri and I had before we pressed the record button. But one of the things that we were reflecting on as our warm up to this episode was the fact that as freelancers, none of our clients really know how to manage us.
Yeah,
we have to manage our clients, so we have to kind of say to them, how are we going to manage this relationship? When do we bill? How do you pay us? How do you check our work? How do we meet deadlines with you? Because they don't know how. They're just as scared and confused as we are. So if we can go halfway or 1/5 of the way to meeting them in that space, admit that it's okay to feel a bit out of your depth, you're not quite sure, but we'll figure it out together, then I think that's a huge part of working that out and just being able to have the confidence to express who you want to be and who you feel you are without having to hide or put on some weird persona or acting mask.
What would you say to a freelancer who are at the moment dealing with burnout, finding clients, financial instability, or some personal crisis?
There will always be a crisis going on in your life somewhere. Okay, I think that the narrative, the stories we are told about freelancers is, oh, these are just one-off things. It's just a dry season as freelancers, and there will always be a crisis somewhere. There will always be a challenge in your freelancing life somewhere. So don't try and get rid of everything. Just focus on what can I control, what can I work with. And I think what I draw from a lot, and I've taken a lot of inspiration from actually since the sort of global pandemics, is I've looked to nature. So this is going to sound a bit woo-woo. I'm not going to say we need to go and hug trees or anything like that. But if we look at nature, look at the world, if you have a garden or there's a park near you, go for a walk. As the year goes on, you see there are times of abundance. The birds are singing, there are new kind of squirrels running, baby squirrels running around, flowers, buds, fruits on the trees. It's abundance, it's great. And then within a few months, everything looks dead. There's nothing happening. It's cold. There's no fun stuff is going on. We just want to run away and hide. And then it comes back again. The cycle continues. There are times of great, there's times of plenty and times of hardship. And, that's an idea, I think, as human beings. That's always been. If we look at most of the big religious texts of whatever faith you ascribe to, there's always a prophet in there somewhere who talks about times of feast and times of famine. And as freelancers, I think what I take from that is expect it. Expect for there always to be a challenge somewhere, and expect that you will have times when clients dry up, work dries up. And everyone says, in those down times, that's when you build your skills, you invest. In those down times, you are panicking about not being able to pay the rent or buy food. Okay, let's be honest. That's the reality of it. And so when I started freelancing 20 years ago now, Yuri, one of the things that I thought about very hard from the start was there will be times of famine. There will be times of no clients, very little money coming in, but I still have bills to pay. So I very deliberately managed my finances as a freelancer to say, I always want to try and have at least a few months bills saved up. Now that's definitely, I have my tax bill that I kind of keep in a separate savings account, but just a few months. So if a client is late paying, if work dries up, then I've got a few months that I know I'm okay. I don't have to panic. And that kind of gives me that kind of resilience, that sense of that's how I keep it going. Now, it's easy for me to say that because I've spent 20 years building that up. Many freelancers, of course, much earlier in the journey, are just starting out on the tracks. So again, it's that sense of, make choices. And they're not always easy choices in terms of when things are really hard. When you don't, money's great when you've got it.
Yeah.
Because money buys you options and choices. The more money you've got, the more options you have, the more choices you have. But there's also something about, make, do, and mend. When I was a kid growing up, here we go, the usual sob story. My parents didn't have anything. We'd have to work down the mill for 20 hours a day just to buy, we had money, okay? The bills were paid, we had food on the table. But there was not, when I was a kid, I remember there was not a lot spare. Okay, Again, Maslow, those first steps, we had them covered. We were comfortable, we were safe. There was not a lot of space. So, I remember used to make, do, and mend, and there was that sense of, okay, well, what can I do to get around this? How can I go to that conference if I can't afford the conference fee? Well, maybe offer yourself as a speaker, and then you get a free ticket. It's a bit scary, but hey, you're getting some exposure. You try and get something new. Ask for a bursary. It's amazing. as freelancers, the things we can ask for and get that we don't think we can, or it's not polite to do that. So when you're struggling, when you're going through hard times, just hold up your hand and go, I'm in a bit of a struggle moment, but I'm still keeping going. We're still delivering. We're still holding professional standards. And sometimes you have to make hard choices about maybe not having that third holiday a year, or spending more time on the beach than you wanted to.
What I also hear between your words is you can ask for help.
Yeah. and that's difficult. And I understand why it's difficult, because we're freelancers. Other companies and charities, universities come to us for help. We're the person they come to fix the problem. So we kind of then, it builds a mindset in us that says, well, if we're the solution to other people's problems, then we can't be a problem ourselves. We can't ask for help. So how do we do that? It's very hard. And it needs a lot of humility and grace to be able to kind of say that in a way that you can then afterwards accept the help. So it's one thing asking for help. It's another thing to accept it. And that's, again, there's something about looking at this as grace and humility. And maybe also just thinking, we don't have to take this for ourselves. Again, I'm part of a family. Some of this, it's been easier for me to accept that support because I can see not how it helps me as a freelancer, but it helps me as a family to kind of do stuff. And I think there's also something that I found really interesting, which is when I've been open about sharing challenges I've been working through, living through, then other freelancers have kind of stepped forward. I'm glad it's not just me, but I didn't know where to say it or who to talk with. So it's been encouragement to them. And then to my clients as well, my companies, universities, who then go, this has really been, so we appreciate that. Thanks for letting us know. And then they say, yeah, and actually what's happened is we've some of our team have struggled with similar stuff in the past, but we've never really known how to talk about it with them. But because you've given us your story, we can now do that. We can support our own team better to work through that way.
Adrian, I wish to have the sky is the limit, but time is the limit to our conversation. So the final question, what is your favorite food?
My favorite food? Gosh, I'm not sure, if I'm honest. I used to cook a lot. I used to have a dream of opening a restaurant. I guess just a nice steak and fries with a salad. That'll do me well. The other thing, just to add on, one thing that I was kind of thinking about resilience as well, that I didn't get a chance to share as we go through. I think one of the things that I always kind of come back to when people ask me, I take in a lot of inspiration from a British Prime Minister called Winston Churchill. So Winston Churchill, during the height of the Second World War, so when Britain was pretty much isolated as a country, it was looking really dark. So this is, kind of the 1940 era. Winston Churchill also struggled a lot with depression as well, in terms of his black dog. And he was asked, how did you keep it going? No one was supporting you. Everyone was against you. You were struggling with your own health and well-being again. And he said, what I do is I KBO. This was his magic phrase, KBO. Keep buggering on. So whatever it takes, just get through that next hour. And I take a lot of encouragement. If that kind of global leader could pull it off and is venerated for it, then I can kind of bugger along a little bit as well.
And what is the best way to connect with you?
Just look me up on social media. I'm on most of the platforms and channels. So stick my name in as Adrian Ashton, see what pops up. And do a bit of stalking of me. See what you think.
Got it, Adrian. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And it's such a pleasure to hear and learn from you. And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button, 5 stars, and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.